It started with laughter in the kitchen. Jess, my roommate, had just introduced her new boyfriend, Marcus, to me one Friday night. He was charming, too charming, the kind of guy who made you feel like the only one in the room when he talked to you. I told myself to stay polite but distant. He was off limits. Jess was my friend. We shared rent, secrets, even late, night snacks and stories. She trusted me, but Marcus had a way of lingering, of looking. He'd catch my eye when Jess wasn't watching, and sometimes I wondered if I was imagining it. We'd bump into each other in the apartment when she was out. Once, we stayed up talking while waiting for Jess to get back from work, and that night I felt something shift. I wish I could say I stopped it there, but I didn't. The emotional connection started quietly. We texted occasionally, then often. He confided in me about his doubts in the relationship, how Jess was always busy, distracted. I told him it wasn't my place to comment, but I didn't stop him either. Maybe part of me liked feeling chosen, like I was seeing a version of him Jess didn't see. It was intoxicating. The first time something happened physically was during a storm. Jess was stuck overnight with her parents. Marcus came over to drop off her charger. I was in my pajamas. We talked. He stayed. One kiss, that's all. But it shattered the line I had drawn in my mind. It turned into a secret that lived in my chest like a second heartbeat. We never dated. We never even fully slept together. But emotionally, we were tangled deep. The guilt was unbearable. I couldn't meet Jess's eyes. I watched her talk about him like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't slipping into my messages late at night. Jess found out, not through a text, not from us, but from the way I froze when she asked if I thought Marcus was acting strange. She read everything in my face. She moved out within a week. Marcus never reached out again. I lost both of them. It's been 2 years, and I still can't forgive myself. Not just for what I did to Jess, but for betraying who I thought I was. Love isn't always what ruins relationships. Sometimes it's the need to feel wanted, and that's the most dangerous emotion of all. When people live in close quarters, such as in shared apartments, college dorms, or tight, knit households, the boundaries between personal and emotional spaces can become alarmingly fluid. Proximity invites familiarity, and familiarity can slowly dissolve the rules we usually live by. When you're constantly around someone, especially someone charismatic, emotionally open, or attentive, it becomes incredibly easy to form a bond. These bonds, while not necessarily romantic at first, can grow into emotionally charged connections that make moral boundaries more difficult to uphold. Human beings are inherently emotional creatures, and when two people begin to share parts of their day, their frustrations, vulnerabilities, and late-night conversations, the emotional intimacy can build faster than either of them realizes. At some point, what began as a simple rapport can tip into something far more dangerous, a connection charged with unspoken attraction, subtle emotional dependence, and growing desire. The challenge is that these situations rarely start with malicious intent. No one wakes up thinking, "I'm going to betray someone I care about." Most of the time, people find themselves in these emotional gray zones almost accidentally, like falling asleep behind the wheel. What makes it even more complicated is the feeling of being seen in a way you haven't felt in a long time. Perhaps your current partner is emotionally unavailable, or you've been going through your own internal struggles, and suddenly this new person, often someone who's around by circumstance, like a roommate's partner, becomes a source of validation and emotional closeness. You begin to confide in each other. The late-night chats extend. There's laughter followed by more personal conversations. And before you realize it, you're waiting for their text, paying closer attention to what they think of you, and fantasizing about possibilities that shouldn't exist. Living under the same roof or sharing frequent physical space intensifies these dynamics. Casual encounters, brushing past each other in the kitchen, sharing inside jokes in the living room, or watching movies together when the roommate is awake, and feel innocent on the surface. But these moments start to carry weight. Emotional infidelity often begins long before any physical line is crossed. The secrecy, the excitement, and the sense of exclusivity build a world that exists outside of the boundaries of the original relationship. And this hidden world can feel intoxicating. You might tell yourself that nothing is happening, that you're just talking. But deep down, you know there's a line being slowly erased. Part of the danger lies in how the mind rationalizes these behaviors. The brain starts finding justifications. If they were really happy, he wouldn't be looking elsewhere, or she treats him badly anyway. Or even, I can't help how I feel. Emotional proximity provides a breeding ground for these kinds of rationalizations. You're not just seeing this person during romantic dates. You're seeing them in real, vulnerable, daily moments. That proximity fast-tracks intimacy in a way that can outpace your conscience, especially in environments where people let their guard down, like home settings. It's easier to share things you wouldn't normally say in public. Those little moments of connection can stack up into a mountain of temptation. The moral confusion is amplified when there's a lack of clarity about what the relationship really is, because there's no official cheating in just feeling things right. But this is precisely where emotional infidelity thrives, when it's undefined, deniable, yet deeply damaging. You may not be having an affair in the traditional, physical sense, but you're emotionally invested in someone who's supposed to be off limits. You're hiding things from your partner or roommate. You feel guilty, but you also feel addicted to the emotional high. It's this duplicity of being torn between what you know is right and what feels emotionally fulfilling that causes the most psychological damage. That proximity, if unchecked, transforms into a kind of emotional dependency. You rely on their opinions, seek their approval, and crave their presence. By the time physical lines are crossed, if they ever are, the betrayal has already taken root. Emotional cheating can be just as painful as physical betrayal, sometimes even more so. Trust is eroded not just by what you did, but by the intimacy you gave away. In shared living situations, this kind of emotional fallout can be explosive, leaving deep wounds and fractured relationships. In the end, what makes emotional proximity so dangerous is how easily it masquerades as friendship, how quietly it grows into something more, and how devastating its consequences can be once it's revealed. Guilt is a powerful emotion, but it's not always a preventative one. Many people assume that feeling guilty means they will never cross a line, but in reality, guilt often arrives after the damage has already been done. It lingers like a shadow, showing up in hindsight rather than acting as a barrier in the moment. The truth is, human behavior is deeply complex and not always guided by morality. Even when someone fully understands that what they're doing is wrong, emotionally or physically, they can still find themselves moving forward with the betrayal. This is especially true in situations where emotional needs are unmet. Boundaries have blurred, and the need for connection begins to overpower the awareness of consequences. One of the key reasons guilt fails to stop betrayal is the overwhelming power of emotional hunger. People often cheat not just out of lust or selfishness, but because they feel invisible, undervalued, or emotionally isolated in their current relationship. When someone new enters their world and offers validation, attention, or emotional closeness, it can feel like oxygen after holding your breath underwater. That connection can be addictive, and the sense of being wanted or understood becomes hard to resist. The person caught in this emotional tug-of-war may still love their partner or respect the person they're betraying, but in the moment, that need for emotional fulfillment overshadows everything else. Guilt may be present, but it's not loud enough to compete with the rush of feeling desired or emotionally seen. Another factor is the ability to compartmentalize. People are capable of mentally separating their actions from their identities. They tell themselves, "This isn't who I really am," or "it's just this once," or even "it won't go too far." These internal narratives help them justify what they're doing, despite knowing it's wrong. This mental separation allows the betrayal to continue without the full weight of guilt stopping them in their tracks. In many cases, the guilt is acknowledged but put on hold. The individual promises themselves they'll fix it later, or that they'll stop after this one interaction. They imagine a future version of themselves cleaning up the mess, but in the present, they allow the behavior to continue. There's also the painful reality that some people don't fully process the depth of their betrayal until they're caught or confronted. Until the secret is exposed, guilt often operates in a vacuum, felt internally but not reflected back by the world. As long as no one knows, it's easier to minimize the impact. There's a false sense of control. But once the truth surfaces, the full emotional cost becomes undeniable. Suddenly, the betrayed party's pain makes the guilt real and sharp. It becomes harder to escape. And ironically, that delayed intensity of guilt can lead to even more self-destructive choices as the person tries to cope with the shame and fallout. Guilt also struggles to stop betrayal because it competes with other strong emotions: desire, longing, resentment, loneliness. These emotions are raw and immediate, while guilt often feels abstract or distant. Even when someone knows they are hurting someone they care about, they may feel emotionally starved or neglected themselves, which creates a dangerous space where betrayal can feel justified in the moment. It's not that they don't care. It's that the emotional void inside them feels more urgent than the moral consequences they know they will face later. In those moments, guilt becomes background noise. Some betrayals begin not with an intentional decision, but through a slow erosion of boundaries, moments that escalate gradually. A message turns into a conversation. A glance turns into a touch. Each step may feel small, but they accumulate until suddenly the person finds themselves in territory they swore they'd never enter. And once the line has been crossed, guilt arrives fully formed, but too late to stop what's already in motion. Betrayal then becomes not a singular act, but a series of small choices made in the presence of guilt, not in the absence of it.